What up, watch peeps? I've done a brief history of CWC, the Cabot Watch Company, in my Royal Navy diver video, so if you're interested, go check that out. The G10 was the first quartz watch supplied to Her Majesty's forces in 1980, and it was nicknamed the Fat Boy. Anyway, what I have is the most modern rendition of this watch, known as the GS. So let's take a look. I'm Pete, and we are Beatboxing with Watches. Wrist check. This is just a 40mm case that I got off of eBay, and a Seiko dial that I got off of AliExpress, wink wink. But this was one of those watches, I just put this together yesterday, that every time I put it together, I'd find something new under the crystal I have to go back and clean out. When I finally got rid of that, then the hands hit. So I had to go back and take those off and reset them, but whatever, it's together now. But let's talk about the CWC. You guys know how I like iconic design watches, and this one certainly fits that bill. Same standard basic cardboard box you get from CWC. One single instruction booklet for all the watches. You get your filled out insurance card, and your watch is just set in a little foam block here. Very utilitarian, but very practical, very cool. So millimeter for millimeter, I think this is one of the coolest watches ever made. So the GS just looks like your standard G10, but this is what they call the next gen addition to the G10 range. Case dimensions are the same as the original Fat Boy, but it's got 200 meters of water resistance. So one of the other differences, it's a stainless steel case, but it has a sapphire crystal. That is different than the originals. And they get that 200 meters water resistance with a screw down crown and a screw down case back, which is not something you normally see on these G10s. Now it just comes on this Admiralty Gray NATO that I got here, like all the other G10s, and like a lot of the CWC range comes on this same strap. Design wise, as you can see, it's got these very kind of straight cut lugs at the case, which is something I really like to look at. It's got very subtle crown guards that aren't too deep because it's only got a 5mm crown, so they have to leave some of that exposed, but it's got really deep coin edge to it, and because it's bead blasted, it's very easy to grip. Now it's got really nice case lines, I think, if you look at it, but they're all square cut 90-degree angles. It's very purpose-built, function over form here. And like I said, everything with a bead blasted finish. And again, if you didn't notice, this has fixed bars, just like the Royal Navy diver. And that is in keeping with the military spec. So you can see there's no spring bars, they're fixed. And if you look real close on the case sides there, you can see how they are just fixed in there. But again, like I said, that's keeping with the military spec, so you do not have to worry about spring bar failure. The crystal's beautiful on this. It's not quite that plexi looking kind of hi-hat. It's got a very kind of heavy tool beveled edge and a really nice double dome, so it's legible at all angles, as you can see here. The dial basically defines the military dial layout, right? There's nothing new here, but when you're talking about iconic watches, it's rare that anything is going to be new. The handset, I love this handset. Let's take a closer look. So to me, these are just the hands that go on this watch. They're very dirty dozen. There's no other choice here. Nothing else would quite work on this watch. So these are available in both date and no date versions. I think the date version has the date at 3 o'clock. Another cool thing to mention here is these G10 Squaddie bumper covers. So these just kind of fit over top of the case, and I'll put it on to show you guys after we go over the specs. But these kind of just give it a whole other look. You add in some black hardware Natos to go with that, and I think it looks really cool. Plus they add a little size to the watch, which at 36.5mm, you have some room for that, and it can still remain super comfortable, and because it's plastic, it adds no weight whatsoever. Going over the dimensions, this watch features a 36.5mm case. It is 42mm from lug tip to lug tip. Comes in at 11.2 millimeters thick, and it has 19 millimeter lugs. Now, going over some of the other specs, the GS version features a sapphire crystal. It uses Swiss Superluminova, and it has a Ronda 715 movement, which is a 5 joule Swiss quartz movement. So it's a really good serviceable quartz movement. And these ones, as I mentioned, come in at 200 meters of water resistance. And on this Natos strap, they come in at 59 grams. And here's how it wears on my 7¼ inch wrist. As you can see, I don't think that wears too small. It's not a large watch, but it's very thin, very comfortable, very easy to wear. And like I said, since it has fixed bars, you are pretty much limited to pass-through straps or these cheapest NATO paratrooper straps. So these are basically MN straps designed for use with fixed bar watches. And I'll show you how that works. Is they just have a removable piece here. So you can take this off, pass it through your watch, and then you reattach this piece. And it just goes around your wrist and it connects like so. I really like it on this Battleship Gray NATO. It's sort of this greenish tinted gray NATO, which just for the record is the best color NATO. I promised you we'd try it on this G10 Squaddie bumper cover. So basically what you do is you can see in there is a little spot for the crown. So you just kind of fit the crown into that spot and then you just flip it over and snap it on. It's just got little tabs you can see in the corner there that go over the corners of the lugs that hold it on. And it is that simple. And here you can see how you can put it on a NATO with black hardware and you just get a whole second look. Pretty cool, I think. You can see the case protruding from the back there. Not something I'd want to do permanently, but it easily comes on and off, and sometimes it's just fun to play with your watches. So let's take a look at it side by side, some other watches. Here you'll see it next to just a basic 36 millimeter Explorer case. Now that Explorer has a larger dial, and I think just longer lugs. It kind of makes it look a little larger than the CWC, which is 36.5 millimeters. Here it is next to a 38 millimeter, the Natos sector, and you can see that just looks noticeably larger. Again, longer lugs, and a larger dial. Quartz versus mechanical side-by-side comparison, not really fair. And the 40 millimeter that I just took off here, this Seiko build. Now you can see the Seiko has a smaller dial, that thick bezel, just different proportions, but doesn't look a lot larger than the CWC as you might expect. Lastly, let's take a look at the lume.
Keep the lume.
So these use just standard Swiss Superluminova. Not C3 or anything like that, but it is a very healthy, even application. Very legible in the dark. Looks great. One other thing we should talk about here are these case back designators. Now this is not an issued watch, so it doesn't have the full set of designators. Just kind of has the Fion, which is the broad arrow, which indicates that it was designed with military specification. This one just has a serial number and a 2-digit year. But I will bring up a picture of a full set on it for an issued watch. Now what you see there is this 0552. Now that designates the branch of the armed forces that this watch was made for. 0552 meaning Royal Marines. It could be W10 for Army or 6BB for the Royal Air Force. Now that 6645, that is the NATO ID for timekeeping devices. Watches, I guess. I don't know, maybe clocks too. And 99 is a country code. And in this case, it designates the UK. Now that 5415317, that is the rest of the NATO stock number. I'm assuming that is specific to a G10 watch. Then next you'll see that 68823, that is the serial number. And under that you have your 2-digit year, in this case 90 as in 1990. So there it is, the CWC G10. This is the GS. Don't be afraid of these if you have a larger wrist. They are so much cooler than you are that you will be just fine. And seriously though, I think they were a little larger than their numbers because of the relatively long square lugs. But I think you'll be able to pull this off better than you think. So issued or not, everyone should have one of these. They're just great watches and they have a lot of history behind them. Alright, before I let you go, sneaker check. I am just wearing my Jordan 3 Tinker Hatfields. Alright, that is it. I am out. If it's not too much trouble, like, subscribe, and come back next time. Peace.